I'm sorry. So we have a good friend of ours here, David Schmidt, who's an author, a world-renowned author, the world of Bellegarth renowned author, who has taken it upon himself recently to write a novel based on Bellegarth, Medieval Combat Society. The title is Belle of the Balls, an erotic coming-of-age story.
Oh.
So he wrote us an erotic novel about Bellegarth, and today, David Schmidt, as we call him Dave 9, has brought chapter 1 of Belle of the Balls to read for us. So let's all give Dave 9.
So, how many of you guys were at the last thing? And okay, so you heard chapter 4 of that last thing. This is the world's.
You can't be the only one who heard that. Like, I know there was.
Yeah, some of you. It's the world's first erotic novel set in the magical world of Bellegarth. It's mildly erotic. So this is chapter 1, exclusively for you guys who are here present today. And this will be out in January, in time for the Battle of the Ring. I will have it at Battle of the Ring for you guys. It'll be available on the interwebs and on Amazon and everything as well. So keep watching. Keep watching all the boards and the Facebooks and all those things for news about this. This is chapter 1, Belle of the Balls, a sensual coming-of-age story. It was long and it was hard.
Jesus.
That's what she said, thought the young man. He stared down at the long, hard shaft of the arrow in his hands. Indeed, the headmistress of his school had described the life of holiness in the same terms. The road to holiness is long and hard, the headmistress had told the students earlier that morning, and wet. It is like slogging through a deep sea of self-denial and discipline. Holiness is not for those who seek pleasures of the flesh. Her words echoed in the mind of Chronicles von Hugenstein as he sat in the woods, fondling his crossbow and arrows. He watched the white stag walking slowly through the trees before him and pondered using the crossbow for the first time in his life. Would he violate the rules of his strictly religious boarding school? Would he penetrate the beast with his mighty arrow? Chronicles had long kept these weapons hidden away in a hollow log in the forest, safe from the penetrating gaze of his fundamentalist teachers. The school was under the absolute sway of its criminally pious headmistress, Madame Tinglisovansky, who strictly forbade the students from taking an animal's life. They were even prohibited from shooting apples during their archery lessons, left to shoot at nothing but small bacteria for practice. After what had happened in the classroom that morning, however, Chronicles didn't care anymore. He looked down at the long shaft of the arrow in his hands and thought back to that morning's lesson. He could hear the stern voice of the headmistress echoing in the ears of his mind's eye. The path to holiness, young ones, is long and hard and veiny.
Oh no.
I hope to mold your minds into steel traps that will snap shut on the bloody leg of holiness. Follow my instructions and, young Master Chronicles, is something the matter? The other students had turned in their seats to stare at Chronicles. Their uniforms, like the walls of the Priory School, were a drab, lackluster gray. A heavy cloud seemed to hang always in the sky here on the outskirts of Vienna. No, headmistress, it's just that I was drawing. A hush fell over the classroom. One student snickered. Chronicles stared down at the paper, where he had been sketching lusty figures of dragons, castles, knights errant, and dick-dicks. As he felt the gaze of Madame Tinglisovansky upon him, his perineum filled with dread. You know very well that unauthorized art is forbidden here, she scolded Chronicles. Uncontrolled drawing could lead to fantasizing, which could lead to kissing, which could lead to fornicating, which might lead to dancing. The other students gasped in horror. Indeed, the religious fundamentalists who ran the school strictly controlled information. All secular media were severely censored. The writings of Marcus Aurelius had been edited to remove the body licentiousness. Opera music was limited due to its sensuous rhythms. Chronicles stared at the classical paintings hung on the wall behind the headmistress. All of them were in black and white, their obscene colors removed. Van Gogh's Starry Night had been covered up almost entirely, because the stars in it look too much like buttholes. Are you paying attention, Chronicles? The headmistress interrupted his reverie. As I was saying, this is why I cannot abide another drawing, young man. It is for your own karmic good. She snatched the sketch pad from Chronicles' desk and threw it out the open window, where a hungry chickadee snatched it up midair. The students erupted into pious applause. Chronicles was often made the butt of jokes by teachers and students alike. His loserdom was twofold, as he failed both academically and socially. When he received low marks on a test, the students ridiculed him. On the badminton courts during recess, his classmates mocked his inability to keep his hand around a shuttlecock. Chronicles had not made a single friend since he came to this boarding school as a child. I have an idea. Why don't you ask Chronicles the next question, headmistress? The boy in front of him had jeered. Chronicles sank ever lower in his seat, feeling the eyes of every other student upon him. I think I shall ask him the next question, said the headmistress. Let us be merciful, though. I shall stick to the most basic matters of spirituality. Even you should be able to answer this one, Chronicles. The watchful eyes of every student were now on Chronicles. When he had enrolled at the Priory School, he had hoped that religion would be the one subject he would excel at. His parents were severely religious, which was why they had given him a biblical name. They had pulled him out of public school at an early age. Chronicles had soon discovered, though, that this was a fundamentalist theosophical school, and he had no idea what the hell a theosophist was. He still struggled with their theology and devotional life. During meditation time, Chronicles' classmates said that he meditated like a sissy Mary. As I am merciful, the headmistress said, I shall give you the most basic softball question. After death, when the elements of your lowered nature coalesce into a psychic shell and remain in kama loka, what is the name of that psychic shell? Oh, come on, ask him a hard one, scoffed a red-headed boy with cruel freckles. In good time. Let us start easy. Well, Chronicles, what is it called? You should know this one. Chronicles wiggled in his seat. He squirmed like a helpless worm that had just been asked a difficult question by its worm headmistress. It is called, he began hesitantly. The performance anxiety made his brain go as limp and flaccid as a noodle. It's called the Kamarupa? The entire class erupted into laughter. Kamarupa, mocked a tow-headed boy. He thinks Kamarupa's spelled with 2 P's. The others pointed at Chronicles and joined in the derision. Oh, behold the ignorance, shouted a second boy. So dark the con of man, said a third, citing the familiar theosophical scripture reference. You suck, Chronicles. No wonder your parents are getting a divorce.
Oh, no.
Chronicles' head hung limp.
Too real.
Chronicles' head hung limp and unerect between his shoulders.
Oh.
Madame Tingla-Santavatsky stood with her hands on her hips. She finally waved for the laughing boys to be silent and addressed the boy sternly. What a sorry excuse for a theosophist, Chronicles. In all my years, I have never taught such a disappointing, lackadaisical student. Your overall fuckery knows no bounds. Chronicles stared down at the polished wood of his desk. The headmistress's words pierced him like a dagger through the vas deferens. He could take no more. He jumped from his seat and fled the classroom, leaving his book bag behind. With tears streaming down his face, he had run to the clearing in the woods, his only refuge in all the world. As he now stood here and stared at the crossbow in his hands, he could hear the headmistress's voice reverberating in his head. Maybe I'll never become a skilled theosophist, he thought. But what more could there be to life besides becoming a skilled theosophist? And I know what you're thinking, dear reader. I can't imagine anything better than being a skilled theosophist either. Chronicles glanced across the clearing. The magnificent white stag continued to graze. The boy had oft heard the villagers of Vienna tell legends of this animal. It possessed magical powers, they said in hushed tones. Whoever could kill the white stag would be granted one single wish. Chronicles fondled the crossbow and arrows and considered putting them back where they came from. He kept them in this hollow log, and he stared down at the crack in the log. If he had owned an anatomy textbook, he would have thought that this log looked a bit like a gnarled oaky vagina. But alas, poor young Chronicles had no idea what a gnarled oaky vagina even looked like. The Theosophists frowned upon sex education, reserving it for couples who had been married for at least 5 years.
Oh.
Chronicles knew that he should store his weapon and walk back to the school. The teachers were always up in arms about prohibiting weapons. It was forbidden to hunt, and the school penalty for penetrating any animal with his arrow would be stiff. The karmic penalty could be even higher. Madame Tingla-Santavatsky, who knew more about reincarnation than anyone, had warned that killing a creature could have dire consequences. The killer might come back in the next life as a vile millipede, or even an Ohioan.
Oh.
But then Chronicles remembered the cruel laughter of the children back at the school. When he thought of returning to that cold, drab classroom, he raised the crossbow higher, and he felt suddenly bold. For once in my life, I will disobey, he said aloud to the rocks and trees, who listened to him with cruel and callous indifference and silence. For once in my life, I shall take a weapon in my hands. I shall hunt. Bill of the Ball.